Well, hello, Facebook land. Jack Beasley and Wilson White here.
Good afternoon or good morning, however, whatever venue you might be in.
Happy Friday to you. We are here for our monthly Ask a Lawyer chat, discuss the law chat, discuss musings and happenings chat, and we'll just see where it takes us.
And you've got the good combination. You got the old guy and the young guy today, so we'll get the views that way. Today we're going to be talking about some subjects including boats, ATVs, wave runners, motorcycles, things like that. It's kind of hard to believe that we're thinking about boat season when it's only 34 degrees today, and the low over the next couple of days, it's going to be 16 degrees one day and 18 degrees the other day. But as someone did remind me, just remember we're 19 days away from the first day of spring. So March is going to be a little bumpy, but it's going to be boat season before you know it.
Not only 19 days from the first day of spring, but 19 days from somebody's birthday.
That's right. What can I say? I'm a spring baby, and hope springs eternal. I say that every year, but time marches on. And as they say, none of us are getting out of here alive. So we got to just enjoy what we can every day. And that's why I try to enjoy my boat. Going to be talking about some boats to start with. I am a boat owner, and I have had a boat since 2004.
Nice. What's the boat's name?
Slingshot.
Awesome.
Actually. And it's kind of after
How'd you come up with that?
The David and Goliath, old Bible story. And I used to sling my kids from one side of the wake to the other.
Nice.
Obviously, when they were younger, try to, throw them off the raft, throw them off the tube. That's what every good father should do with their children. I grew up around the lake at Grand Lake. Grandfather had a boat. I bought my first boat right after college. So I've been a boat owner most of my life.
What part of Grand Lake do you keep it at?
I used to be up near Drowning Creek. Okay. Which is kind of a tough.
What a terrible name.
What a terrible name. And anybody you would take to Grand Lake, they'd say, "Hey,
next to Poisonous Snake Creek."
That's right, But Drowning Creek, it's a great cove and everything like that. High Lift Marina, give them kind of a shout out. I bought my boat from them and had it there for a long time. But then I've moved my boat to Skiatook.
Yeah.
Skiatook. It's probably my new favorite lake. Beautiful water, 20 minutes from Tulsa, easy to get to. A lot less crowded. I mean, Grand Lake just got to be a point where lots of crazies on Grand Lake, plus people in big boats could really run you down and everything like that. One of the things I really want to stress with boats is the insurance requirements or the complete lack of insurance requirements.
Right.
As you know, to drive a car on the road in Oklahoma, you have to have mandatory insurance, minimum. As a side note, we always like people to have more than just the minimum.
Sure.
Because we see catastrophic injuries every day.
Right. And I think that some good context to this. People don't think of this kind of boring stuff when they think of the lake, right?
Exactly.
Hey, we're going to have a good time. We got our boat, our jet skis. Let's go have a good time. And no one thinks of something as boring as insurance, but as important as insurance.
Well, and everybody thinks, hey, I'm going to be on the water. I'm going to keep 100 feet from any other boat, from shore. The only time I'm going to get close to somebody is when I'm docking or getting gas. And that's a great thought, but you would be surprised at how dangerous boats are and how close you can get when somebody is inattentive boating. And probably the bulk of them are alcohol-related, drug-related, and everything like that. I have actually handled several boat cases, and I've had a boat fatality. Very sad. A woman died, left a husband and 3 small kids, and just a tragic situation. It wasn't her fault. It was just somebody who was being completely inattentive.
Right.
But the big requirement for any boat owner, you need to understand in Oklahoma, there's no insurance requirements. You don't have to have insurance to get out on the water for your boat.
So you can go buy a boat, put it out there, and start driving around with no insurance, and you're doing nothing illegal.
Exactly. And the only time some people have insurance is if they have a loan at the bank on the boat, right? Because you don't want a storm to come along and sink your boat.
Right.
And there was a big storm down at Tenkiller month or two ago, took out lots of boats and everything like that. So sometimes people will have insurance on the boat for the the comprehensiveness of it, if it burns up or something like that. But people don't want to have boat liability, which is one of the requirements with your car. You have to have liability coverage. There's a specific law on the books that really should scare any boat owner. And what it basically says, which is completely different than cars,
Right.
is that the owner of a vessel shall be liable for any injury or damages occasioned by the negligent operation of such vessel. What that means is
Yeah, let's
this.
break that down.
Okay. What this means is, Jack, if you loan me your car and I drive your car this weekend,
Right.
and you go to New York for a wedding and I'm in your car, I'm going to be responsible for the accident. But if let's say I've got a boat and I'm going to go to New York for a wedding and I give you my boat,
Right.
you're going to take your kids out. What happens is you're liable because you're the boat driver,
Right.
for the negligent operation.
So I hit somebody with my boat,
Right.
run over somebody that's
Right.
in the water I don't see, or crash into a dock. More likely crash
Sure.
into a dock,
Right.
or
Anything
hit
like
another
that.
boat.
Right. If I'm in New York City, you're responsible and I'm responsible.
Right.
And that's can be personal responsibility. And again, if it was in a car, most people have car insurance, right? If I
Sure.
loan you my car and you're driving it, you've got insurance on your car, plus you can fall back on my car insurance.
Plus, with a car, if you loan me the car and I go hit somebody, we got to show that you had some knowledge that I was an unsafe driver. Right?
Exactly.
In other words, if I hit somebody with your car that you loan me, that you lent me, that it's not going to be automatic where they can come after you.
Right. Exactly.
But that's not the case with boats.
Right. Because in cars, now if I loan you my car and you're drunk when I loan it to you, then I can be responsible.
Sure.
But if I loan you my car and you're sober, but the difference in boats is it makes no matter because you can be responsible and I can be responsible.
Right.
And the scary part is if you don't have insurance on your boat, then you are up a creek without a paddle. Because if it happens in the car scenario, there's insurance, right? Because it's mandatory to have insurance on that. So I really want to stress to people that if you have a boat, if you have a Sea-Doo, if you have a wave runner, you really need to get some insurance.
Now, boat insurance, is this super expensive stuff? I mean, are people going to be put out by getting this?
Double cheap. I've got a boat. It's a 24-foot boat. I insure it with Progressive. My comprehensive, my collision, and my liability is $400 a year.
Mm-hmm.
So if my boat sinks, it's covered. I've got a bank loan on it. If my boat is in a storm, gets damaged, comprehensive, whatever, it's covered. And if I hurt somebody, or somebody's driving my boat and they hurt somebody, I've got $250,000 per person, $500,000 of liability coverage for $400 a year.
Right.
And on your car, that same coverage might be $1,500.
Right. Okay. So that's something pretty simple. And for somebody that hates insurance companies as much as I do, it's funny to recommend everyone go buy insurance, but it's just so important to protect yourself and to ensure that you're covered in case something does go wrong. Because like I said, you go out to the lake, you don't think something's going to go wrong.
Oh, no. Right.
All it takes is, some other jackwagon that makes a big wake, and then you run into somebody, or if you
Right.
had a few things to drink and you hit a dock or you hit another boat, this can turn into a real headache. And so,
Well, and the other thing too, my experience, lifetime of boating, some of the most calm people that would never drink and drive in a car in town get to the water and they go crazy. They just, I mean,
what's the big area on Grand Lake that's like real renowned to be crazy, right?
It's Dripping Springs.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And there's some cliffs there, and people go there. The girls have too much to drink, and sometimes articles of clothes don't make it on the way down.
I've just heard stories from college roommates of mine, and it's quite a scene to be seen, I
Yeah,
times.
if you've ever been on Grand Lake, that's one of those places you can take off your bucket list. You can go and
Sure.
you can see that and everything like that. But those are just some of the important parts of it. Is how dangerous boats can be,
Mhm.
and with one of those things, people. The only other kind of scary part of being a boat owner, you don't have to have a boat license.
Mhm.
The only license you actually have to have is a driver's license.
Okay.
If you're a licensed driver, 16 years old, I really don't know what driving a car gives you experience to drive
That's
a
the
boat.
same thing. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
but-
water, streets.
But with that and everything like that. So that's kind of an important part. Do we have any questions that have come in or anything?
I'm not seeing any quite yet, but
Okay.
we'll get to them when they do.
Great. A couple of other things I'd like to talk about: wave runners, jet skis. There are some requirements, some licensing requirements for those, mostly for young children under the age of 16, because they figure if you have a learner's permit or a driver's license, you've at least got some training there. But I think the minimum age might be 10, maybe 12, but up to 14. There is a safety class, a boating safety class in Oklahoma that a child does have to take. They do have to pass that, and they do have to keep that license with them on the water. I think you can do it online now.
Mhm.
It's a really good book, but that's kind of the key.
So I didn't grow up around the water much, but when my college roommate Larry took me to Grand Lake freshman year of college, I got onto a Sea-Doo after multiple failed attempts falling off the back. Also not known for my balance, but that's okay.
Right.
Well, I got too close to shore and it like ran aground. And so then here I am out there not in the middle of Grand Lake, but I'm not near our friends. And so I really struggled to get on it. So some of these 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds that are getting licensed are probably way more apt at driving these things than I am. So
Right. The other thing too that I would like to stress, it's a really interesting fact. A lot of people, big families, they might have 2 wave runners, or they know people, friends that they run around with, and sometimes it's not unusual for people to let their 14-year-old son or daughter go out with some other friends. But statistically, it's like 75 or 80% of all accidents with wave runners or Sea-Doos are with a family member or somebody you know.
mhm.
And that's a shocking statistic, because probably in car wrecks, maybe 1 or 2% are with somebody you know or you've met before. Normally it's just 2 strangers having it. So whenever you have something like that you actually know or you're related, you think, well, gosh, why would somebody hurt me? One of the problems with wave runners is, if you've ever been on the water, you're driving your boat, they're wanting to jump your wake to get some high elevation.
Mhm.
So you usually get 2 people going, one is following the other, and clearly they're always too close and everything like that. And interesting from an insurance standpoint, I used to have a wave runner when my kids were young. My kids are now 23 and 26, but we had one wave runner, and it was like maybe $150 a year to insure. But they told me that if I ever bought a second wave runner, that the insurance was almost going to triple or quadruple, because of the fact of how much dangerous it is if you have 2 of the wave runners.
Mhm.
So if you do have that, be sure you've got the insurance. Be sure to get all that taken care of.
Sure. We've got a question here from Evan Farbach. I'm the local radio personality up in Bartlesville. Awesome. Sports radio up in Bartlesville. His question: if I get in an accident on my ATV, am I covered under my car insurance? And I've actually had several ATV cases throughout my career, and those, just like boats, which can be super fun and essentially a big toy that you would consider like a toy, can turn dangerous pretty quickly if you're not doing it right, or if the person isn't being at least somewhat safe. In the cases I've had, at least where I have dealt with that for my clients and gotten recoveries, we made recoveries under homeowners insurance policies, where when you have homeowners insurance or renters insurance, there's going to be a line in there, in addition to like covering your TV and your clothes and your furniture and stuff. There's going to be a line in there for negligence, and where if you have someone over to your house or your apartment and they fall and because you left your shirt out and they break their leg or something. Or in this case, if I have a piece of property with an ATV on it and I have my kids, I've got 2 boys, they have their friends over and they go running around on the ATV and somebody gets hurt, my homeowner's insurance negligence coverage will kick in and provide some coverage to pay for any personal injury damages. So good question, Evan. ATVs are really fun. 4-wheelers are really fun. But if something happens to you or somebody you know with that, there's usually going to be some insurance coverage there to provide money in case you need it.
And that's, again, if the person has a home or they have rental insurance.
Sure.
And I know a lot of times people don't have rental insurance on an apartment or something like that. That's really something you probably should stress if you have anything like that. Now, on the ATVs, were these off-road or were they street legal?
Well, good question. Every context of the cases I've worked, they were being used off-road.
Okay.
And so I don't know if you can just get in one and drive down Harvard or Yale, but I mean, they were pretty rugged. They were just open cage. And I think the last one I had did have seatbelts. It was a pretty big one, but I'm not sure, to answer your question.
What I think probably where I was going is a lot of times if you have car insurance, the policies these days will really define what a car is or an automobile. And a lot of times your car insurance will specifically exclude ATVs, motorcycles, things like that. So if you do have some pretty sophisticated toys, it's not a lot of money to get those things insured. Ask your broker, ask your agents. I know a lot of people think, I think I'm covered. They don't ask, and for maybe $100 or $200 a year, they could have had coverage, could have had peace of mind. And there's nothing worse than to have a legal problem and you got no insurance coverage.
Sure. I mean, that can really sink the fun.
Yeah.
No pun intended, with your boat or your ATV.
Right.
Another thing, again, it's kind of silly talking about this as cold as it is this week. It's funny. I went to Las Vegas this week with my good friend for a quick little trip. Saw a hockey game out there. When I left, it was like 75 degrees and sunny. And I land back in Tulsa, and the pilot came on with his pilot speak and was like, it's solid 29 degrees in Tulsa with overcast and damp skies. And I'm like, 29 degrees. It was funny to talk about these summertime activities when it's so cold outside, but it's almost that time of the year, and it's certainly going to be looking up as we get closer to St. Patrick's Day and to Wilson's birthday, start spring, Easter coming up, that kind of weather to use these things. Another thing people use a lot that comes up in our line of work is motorcycles. And so we see a lot of people that go out when the weather gets really nice and go cruising. You see motorcycle wrecks a lot. And there are a couple of things I wanted to bring up that I've seen in cases I've represented clients in that you wouldn't necessarily think of. And so one of which is that there is no law requiring you to wear a motorcycle helmet, right? And so a lot of times jurors and potential jurors will really pick on a client of mine or a motorcycle rider in general for not having a helmet on, even though they weren't supposed to. They didn't have to. And that's something I think that is not well known amongst the public, and something to keep in mind. Now, sitting here today, I recommend everybody wear a helmet because the odds of you getting hurt with a helmet on are much, how am I phrasing this? You're going to be a lot safer with a helmet on than without one, okay? But I know some people don't like to wear helmets and cramps their style.
Sure.
But another thing I've seen come up in cases with motorcycle crashes is motorcycle drivers who don't have the endorsement on their driver's license. So just because you have a regular driver's license, if you're going to go drive a motorcycle in Oklahoma, you're supposed to have an M endorsement, which says you've been approved and tested to drive motorcycles. And so that's something to keep in mind as we approach the warm weather season and to kind of cover your own butt in the future in case you're out there driving. The vast majority of motorcycle drivers are extremely safe, arguably more safe than car drivers because they realize that they're in blind spots, that they're more vulnerable outside of a car. But sometimes accidents happen, and that's why you have to be able to be there to hold people that don't follow the driver safety rules and the traffic laws accountable. And so you want to give yourself every advantage you can by potentially wearing a helmet, having the motorcycle endorsement on your license, and to protect yourself in that situation. A couple of new questions here. Martin Miller asks, what about a seatbelt? So why don't you take that one, Wilson?
Okay. We do have seatbelt laws in Oklahoma, and one of the quirks in that is I think seatbelts in the front seat are mandatory.
Correct.
Seatbelts in the back seat are not.
Correct. Unless you're a kiddo.
Yeah, unless you're a child,
Yeah.
right. We are huge advocates of seatbelts. I've done work years ago in products liability work. If you want to see something shocking, see what happens to an unbelted crash test dummy at a 35-mile-an-hour sled test. So that's very important. And I guess, Jack, since you're more the trial litigation, if you do not wear a seatbelt, is that admissible in trial?
Oh, gosh. And this has gone back and forth. I think currently it is, although I'd have to go do a Westlaw search to be completely fair here. Where this comes up is, and why he asked this, and I have a case going on right now where you're cruising down the road doing nothing wrong, but then somebody who doesn't follow the traffic laws hits you or causes a crash that injures you. If you're not wearing a seatbelt, they're going to try to bring that up and make it seem like you were in the wrong and they shouldn't be held responsible and they're not liable because you didn't have a seatbelt on. When in reality, they're the ones that broke the traffic laws and caused the crash. And so, full disclosure, a typical lawyer, I'd have to go take a look at the current statute to give you a firm answer, but I believe it is admissible at this time.
Well, and where it comes up in the claims department, which is where I do a lot of my work, is it's all over the medical records, right?
Right.
And you have to send the medical records and the medical bills when you make a demand packet to State Farm, and normally the first line in the ER record says, unbelted male occupant hit at high speeds, from the rear and ended up in the dashboard and with his knees and into the steering wheel. Mm-hmm. So insurance company right then is already going to discount your case, and they're going to use that to their advantage. And I'm kind of old school and kind of common sense. Juries can figure out pretty soon, right? They're either going to look at those medical records or they're going to get the belief that if you've got 2 fractured knees, chances are you weren't wearing your seatbelt. Right. So it's, either from the claim side or from trial side, it's always good to wear. It's an interesting statistic. Young males in pickup trucks are the highest class of non-seatbelt use. Mm-hmm. Just because people get in, they'll wear them, religiously in the car, and then they'll get in a pickup truck and just not put them on, and you're probably a little more dangerous, because you're up higher and you're faster and things like that.
I had a friend in high school that had a pickup truck that was painted camouflage, almost like an army vehicle, but it wasn't an army vehicle. And I would imagine sometimes the seatbelts weren't always worn in those. Another question here. Any thoughts on the new Lime scooters here in town? Thank you, Ashley, for that question. These are really interesting. So kind of funny story. I rode one of these around Christmas with my friend Grant. Not with him on the same scooter, but he and I were out downtown, and we were like, well, let's take some scooters to the next place. Didn't realize they do not self-propel immediately. So You've got to get on them and get going a little bit. Well, Jack here just gets on one and hits the go button, and it doesn't go, and then I fall and make everyone laugh. Thankfully, I was okay. But there's a lot of questions regarding these things coming around. I saw an article, I think today or yesterday, that the Lime brand scooters, so there's different brands. There's like Bird, BYRD, and there's Lime, and there's even a couple other ones, I think, especially outside of the Tulsa and Oklahoma City areas. But I saw an article where the Lime ones are having some faulty sensor issue where they just break suddenly while you're going. But I think the rules are, and correct me if I'm wrong, you got to use them on streets. You can't use them on sidewalks, right?
Right. We've had lots of calls on that, and I think that it's kind of like similar with a bike, because I know a lot of people think they can ride a bike on a sidewalk, and sometimes it's safer there, but you're kind of getting to a gray area sometimes, especially like up and down 15th. up and down Brookside because there's so much foot traffic,
Right.
you know, on the sidewalks, but you don't want to necessarily be on the street and everything like that. One of the things that we've had lots of calls in the claims department. First of all, I think that when you sign up for those, I'm assuming that there's going to be a waiver that you have signed because to get on there, and that's what happens is people don't realize there's a waiver. You're just, you know, click here, and that's an issue. Plus, you're not wearing a helmet. And I think a lot of people too, it's kind of like the motorcycles. You assume the risk. I mean, you're there, you don't have a helmet on, and they go pretty fast.
Yeah, the one I was on was like going like 13 miles an hour
Yeah.
at one point, and you're right. I had no helmet, no protective gear,
Right.
nor do I have any experience on these
Yeah.
things.
With that.
I'm also not known for my balance, and they require a little bit of balance. So,
And Tulsa County is a pretty conservative place. You know, a lot of people, you know, think that you're going to assume the risk. That's another point I wanted to make with one of Jack's motorcycles. I've handled lots of motorcycle cases. I've handled motorcycle fatality. The overwhelming majority of motorcycle wrecks are not the fault of the motorcycle rider,
right.
but they end up with catastrophic injuries. And in one of them, it was a death. The young man died, and it wasn't his fault. It was another motorcycle rider. There's an interesting, in my opinion, jury bias too, that believe if you're going to ride a motorcycle and you want the wind in your hair and you don't want to ride a helmet, that's great. But, you know, you can really get hurt bad. And so they're not going to be overly generous sometimes, in my opinion. They'll be pretty conservative, and you can really have some catastrophic injuries and lifetime, you know, issues and problems.
Sure. And when we say conservative, we don't mean Republican, Democrat. We mean when you look at Tulsa County juries, Oklahoma juries as a state, compared to some of the other places in America, particularly the coasts and larger cities. The jury verdicts are typically smaller here. For the same injuries you would see, you get larger verdicts in other places. And so that's what we mean when we talk about conservative juries. But absolutely, that's a thing that juror bias, I mean, we're all humans. We are all shaped by our own experiences. And for whatever reason, a lot of jurors have biases against motorcycle riders.
Right.
And it's hard when the motorcycle rider didn't do anything wrong and there is somebody that did break a traffic rule and a traffic law, and it's hard to hold them accountable sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to put yourself in the best position you can. That's why we're talking about uses of helmets, getting the M endorsement on your license, and just being generally as safe as you can with that. So,
and also on some of the motorcycles I've seen, insurance can be very inexpensive, and a lot of times people don't buy the uninsured motorist coverage.
Right.
And a lot of times, you know, you've got one surgery in a motorcycle wreck, and you could easily be talking 50, 75,000. And for $50 a year, you could have bought uninsured motorist coverage, which helps kick in. And what that is if you got a $50,000 problem and the other driver only has $25,000 of liability coverage, you can use their 25 and you can use your 25.
Sure.
So if you have a motorcycle, SUV, any of those, really sit down with your agent, sit down with your broker, go online. Don't just be a price point shopper. We see people that for $25 could have had $50,000 more coverage, and that's sometimes the difference between getting bills paid and not.
right.
So,
Well, guys, it's almost 12:30. That's the end of our chat this month. Be sure to tune in every first Friday of every month here on the Car and Car Facebook page for an Ask a Lawyer topic, and shoot us your questions. As always, if you have additional questions or if you've watched this and want to reach out to us, do so anytime. Our phone number is 918-747-1000. It's 918-747-1000. It is answered almost 24 hours a day. Maybe not quite in the middle of the night. We'll get back to you, though. But we're here, and we're happy to talk to you. We have offices in Tulsa and Oklahoma City, so we can go from that. So next time we see you, Wilson, you'll be a year older, a year wiser. Hopefully it'll be a little bit warmer.
and hopefully with some type of a tan on my pale body from my from days out on the lake.
Out on the
everything like that.
slingshot.
On the slingshot, and make sure that it's still floating. I haven't seen it in a while. So.
Otherwise, that insurance could come in handy.
That's
So
right.
have a great weekend. Have a great Friday. I'm going to go ahead and end this now, guys. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.